Good morning, Bananamators. Today I'm having a little play around with the olive rig. So this was made by Cutout. You can find him on Twitter and on Gumroad. If you look for Toonboom rigs, this is one of the rigs that you'll find. He has it up for free, but by all means throw him a couple bucks for doing such a good job supplying the Toonboom universe with a few more rigs, because there's not enough going around. This is great. I've had a little play around with it, and it's something you could expect to see in a studio. Not all studios rig the same way. So even a studio at the top floor of a building and the bottom of the floor of a building, both of them could rig differently. Even from one show to the next, there might be reasons to rig differently because of the style of animation that's required. Something that needs a lot of redraw is going to be much simpler, ideally, unless they hate the animators, and something that's very cut out, something like Mercury, they use a lot of deformers to get those 360 rigs to make everything look really smooth, that like faux 3D. Not my favorite. The animation is beautiful, but I love just quick and dirty hand-drawn stuff. That's my fave. So this rig is kind of a medium complexity rig. It's got a lot of interesting stuff that is really valuable if you want to open it up and learn. It's got layer selectors, auto patches, all kinds of stuff. The rig is open, so there's not a lot of groups, but it's the size of several football fields. I like to have, you can download my template on Gumroad as well. I like to keep it like a little clump of just mess, which some people despise. My friend is the rigging supervisor for a massive studio, and she thinks it's the worst. She's like, this is terrible. Why is it a people shape? 'Cause it's a people. Yeah, definitely take a look at this. Like I said, it's not the only way, but it's certainly something you could expect to come across in a studio if that's something that you're interested in learning more about. So having said that, let's just go through my order of operations, because I've been doing character revisions. And the reason my channel exists is because I was doing character revisions a few years ago. And I kept coming across things that animators were doing that was making their life harder. And it's just like, stop doing this to yourself. Because cutout animation is made to be economical, all right? So it comes with all these poses. This is the generic one. There's also one with clothes. There's some reverse situations here with the hair, which is very handy because it's an asymmetrical character. But what I'm going to do is collapse this down. I'm going to cut everything like this, and then I'd paste them here. I've already got them pasted, but my scene, I'm going to say, is 24 frames long because I'm going to do a little walk cycle. And so keeping the keys posted after that is going to give me a little safety net so I can go and grab things later. It's just important to know if you're using all keyframes mode and you move something on frame 1 like this, it is going to affect these as well, right? So that's very important to keep in mind. Anything that you're doing with the arms and stuff will transfer over to those things you're saving, so you might want to save a second copy just for safety's sake. And I brought this rig into a new scene, so I'm not going to be affecting the master rig that I've downloaded. It's going to be blank each time I pull it in. So walk cycles, way simpler with cutout than people think it is if you pile all your keys on top of each one another. So what I'm going to do is the maximum for every part. And you're like, but Tracy, what about the overlap and the follow through? And I say, we will do that later. That is later's problem. Boop. You can even just do legs first and then do arms first, or arms next, but I'm just going to do it like this. We're going to have the maximum swing. I'm going to just go for a little bit of a swingy arm so it really exemplifies what I'm doing here. This arm is the very back. Boop. Boop. Now here, if I wanted to convert back to this, I have it saved, copy paste, and it's back to its original place. Because I'm only rotating things, I'm not going to have too much trouble if I need to get things back into place. Now this arm is back. The wrist is going this high. I'm going to make sure the wrist is going about that high. All right. Boop, boop. Middle one's in between those two. This leg is coming from the back. Bend it like this. So this is very mechanical. You're thinking about keeping it sort of symmetrical, keeping the leg kicks and stuff approximately the same height on the lifts so that you don't get those, I've seen some real wobbly walks lately. It's really easy to give yourself an accidental limp when you're animating. You try and keep everything about the same distance apart. Here, that's a little bit farther, like this. So very, very mechanical and stiff. And you're saying, but there's no overlap and follow through. There's no life in this, but we're going to get to that later. All right. So next we're going to do the hips separate from the legs. So the high hip is going to be the load-bearing hip, which in this case is that one. And I'm just going to give it a little bit of a skew. If this character is very three-dimensional, you would want to make sure that the belt is wrapping around appropriately. But for something with this sort of design, a little hip skew is going to be enough. And then just think about if this hip here is working for you. So let's see what we have in terms of deformers. Yeah, there's deformers on the hip and the thigh. So if we wanted to adjust this a little bit, we would. One thing I see that is an absolute nightmare is that people use the deformer to rotate the leg like this. Never, ever do that. Rotate as much as possible with the rotation, and then when you can't get it anymore, when something isn't lined up, you fix it with deformers. If you use the deformers as little as possible, your interpolation is going to work more often, because this stuff interpolates straight. So if it's going from here, and even if you use this handy device here in your deformer group, you click these two things, you rotate it, and you bring your leg out like this, it's going to interpolate that directly. It's not going to rotate it, and you're going to end up with tweening nightmares. And the whole reason we use Cutout, it's not because it's better, it's because it's faster. So if you're not doing it in the most economical way possible, you're just hurting yourself. And it makes me sad. So straight shoulders, this hip is up, so now this shoulder is going to be up. Let me see, our two shoulders are separate, and they're separate in here. So this is the type of thing I really like to have close together. I love having the two shoulders and arms next to each other in tight little clumps, because then I can control, select, and I can tilt them like this. So now we've got some torso incident that needs to be resolved. We're just going to do the tiniest little bit there. And then for the arms, I'm going to actually just move it with the pivot point. This is so important. Like, only use deformers as a last resort, for the love of all that is holy. Dude, so yeah, actually I could just select those, but I love selecting from the timeline because it's very clear then where my animation is going, because sometimes there's pegs and sub-pegs, especially on stuff like the head. So if I hit the chin and I go B, B, B up the chain, here's one peg, I hit B again, and now I've got a neck peg, and then I hit B again, torso peg. It's all very clean. This is nice. This is a tidy little rig. Sometimes you'll have double single pegs, which is there for a reason, I am sure. All right, so now that we've got this down, move using the pivot point. Actually, maybe I want to get a little bit of rotation on the shoulders. Let's see. We'll bring this shoulder back. Animation on the pegs. Sometimes I see I'll be revising something and there's just so much animation on the deformer, I just want to sit the person down and be like, you've made this so difficult on yourself. I can't imagine how stressful it is, first of all, to be floundering around guessing all the time. Working in this way, where you have a very methodical process about getting the mechanics down first and then adding a little bit of flair, is just going to save your sanity a little bit. The head I'm going to add in last. So now that I've got the maximums of the arm swing, like this, I'm going to pace my cycle out. Oh, I'm going to need one in between here. This one is on 24. Haha. So we put number 1 on number 25. We're going to tween this. Alt-K. And here we've got a nice little walk. So this is on half speed. So if I put this back on full speed, there we go. We've got a beautiful walk cycle. And you're like, Tracy, it's dead and lifeless. It's so floaty. It is. This is what you see when someone says floaty animation, this is what they mean. It doesn't have any weight. It's not really planting the feet on the ground. It's just kind of moving around. Moving is not animating. It's just moving. Animating, you need it to come alive a little bit. So here we're going to figure out how to plant these feet a little bit closer to where they need on the ground. I don't want to spread them out too much more, so I'm going to just shift these big old feet to where I want them sitting on the ground. Here, what we're going to do, I'm not going to use the outside master peg, I'm going to use the inside master peg, the very top hierarchy, for the up and down motion. So here I'm going to put that foot right on that line. So it goes from here up onto the line, and then plant the feet like that. Doggies, tickling my feet. And then copy frame 1 into frame 24. So now we can check. There's going to be places along the way where our stuff isn't quite lining up. This is going to be a little bearing foot. So here, using this, we can open it so we're not adding any animation. Like this. And for this, I'm going to switch to motion keyframes. Okay, so now from here, that back foot is the load-bearing foot, so we're going to make sure the back foot is planted right on that line. And if you're doing a 3/4 walk towards the camera, your lines would just be on a little bit of an angle. I'm just kind of have a 3/4 side walk here. Okay, now the front foot is the load-bearing foot, so that's the one we're going to make sure is lined up very carefully, like that. So now our feet are planted on the treadmill, and we are getting it does feel a little bit limpy because that back foot is bringing it up a little bit. All right, so maybe we have to bring that load-bearing foot down below the line to the bottom of the line instead of the top of the line, just to keep it a little bit less limpy. And this one will bring a little bit up. So I just take everything like this one step at a time. Boop, 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 boop. All right, it's a little bit limpy, but we're gonna live with it. Let's add a little bit of life to this character. Head's coming up. Whoop. And then I'm going to have the top of the arc about here. And then I'm going to take this lower part, move it over like this. So I'm just going to shift the keys. Do this one a little sooner. And then when it thumps, then in a couple frames, we're going to want it to go back down again. Higher. And then, of course, 1 always goes to the end. All right, we got a little bit of a head bounce. Fabulous. So the last step for the mechanical part, once I had all this working, I'm going to see if I want some holds on the arms. So let's say the top of the swing here, we want to slow out. Down at the bottom, we don't want any slow. At the back, we want a little bit of slow. We want it to slow out. It's away towards the front. Now it's all the way towards the front. We're going to have it slow into that a little bit. Okay. So this one has 33 at the end, so we're going to match this. 33, 22. So now that arm has a little bit of too much there coming towards the front. So what I'm going to do is take this key out. There we go. So we're going to have a slower lower arm here that comes up like that. And then the lower arm is going to slow out here. So we're just adding those little eases on the pieces one by one. And there's still no overlap. We're going to add that in later. So here there's none. Yeah, okay, so we like that. Now we're going to do the back arm. B, 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 B. Brings us up the chain. And the last thing I want is kick adjustment. What I'm going to do is leave that till later. So now we've got all that stuff. We put a little bit of ease in on our arms. We've got a little bit of head motion. It's not the best in the world, but it's good enough for this demo purposes. And we're like, okay, fantastic. You do not stop here. This is floaty. Okay, it's all moving in kind of a similar rhythm. The lower arm and the upper arm are moving at very similar speeds. So what we're going to do is slam keys down on all this stuff. Now that we're done tweening, we're done the tweening phase, make sure everything has its own keyframe. We're going to put it back on stop motion, and then we're going to adjust the timing of stuff. So what we're going to do is relay it. We're going to take the lower arm only, lower arm and hand, it's compressed. We're going to move it over to, this is the same as this one, so the one before it, we're going to copy and paste. This is something you get used to with practice. Take everything in the hand, we're going to move it over to, ignore the duplicate frame, take this one and copy it down here. So now this front arm has some overlapping action. The lower arm is reaching its maximum a little bit later And the hand is moving, is hitting its maximum a little bit later than the lower arm. Again, doot, move it over, copy, ignore the duplicate frame. Take the hand, move it over to take this and duplicate frame. So now the hand reaches its maximum. Okay, upper arm reaches its maximum, lower arm reaches its maximum, hand reaches its maximum in a chain. Because it's chained, you can do it all in one shot, everything maximized, and then offset it when you're done. So now, much easier, that stuff is done in the arms and they're getting a little bit more life. Once you've done that, you've relayed the chains, you can add any sort of flourish that you think is necessary. So here, if you want a little bit more drag on this hand, you add it in stop motion. You just go through each piece of this character and detail it. So this is the phase that not a lot of people get to because they scramble manically trying to get the mechanics down. And I've seen people just treat it entirely like they're animating a regular character, like they would with, like if they're animating from scratch. Because when you're animating a character, you're drawing every single piece. You kind of have to think of the overlap and follow through at the same time, like it has to be built in, but you don't need to do that for Cutout. You can add it in later. You can start and work in layers, and that's what's going to get you something fast. Like this rock cycle now, I still find it's a little bit limpy because of the 3/4 front version of the walk. I mean, but we could still take that out if we wanted to. We could have it perfectly RY because we've kept everything on here. So we're just going to bring this stuff down to about the same height and make sure that our stuff is happening at a similar height, and that's going to get rid of that. If our little head portion of the animation isn't working, we can go through and finesse that. So it goes from here, it's going down, down, up, up, and just add a little bit of finesse and a curve and a arc to everything that we're doing, okay? So maybe we thought that we want more hip sway or turn or something like that. That's something that is more easily addressed if you just do it in your master keys. So think very hard about your master keys, and then you won't need to do as much work in this stage. So here at this point, if I wanted to do the hair, I could go through and do either one hair at a time like this and just give it a little bit of like flag motion. Have it drag behind everything and do that separately. Okay, so now one hair is done. Floopity, 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 floopity. Next, do this one. It's important to know that studio animation is not like some sort of free-form art style. That it's more like a factory, like you're a factory animator. And once you get to this stage, I can start giving the character personality and life and really giving a lot of love to what's happening here. But especially in television animation, when you've got a super fast turnaround, the best thing you can do for yourself is to find a very efficient way to get your keys working well in the beginning. And then this detail stage, you can decide how much time you have left over to add luxurious stuff like hair. Like if this is a part of your show that you have to do, that's one thing, but some shows don't have any hair overlap and follow through. It's just, there's not enough time. You have to just focus on your big keys, especially if it's a scene that's not a showstopper. If you're a junior animator, you're not getting the key elements of the show. You're getting the eating the cereal, you're getting the characters walking to the interesting location. You're not getting the interesting location. So start very, very simple. Plan out your keys, get all the mechanics working, add a little bit of that overshoot and follow through by like moving your stuff, your chains. I've done other videos about that where I have some little bouncing hearts where I do all the hearts at one time and then chain them out after. And then add these little details. So now we've got another layer of complexity on the thing. Is by adding this action of the hair, we can do a little bit more of an interesting kick on these legs. So here it's starting to peel off, get that foot peel in, and add details. At any time, like this is I feel, good enough for a background character. This amount of walk cycle is pretty much all you need, but anything in addition to that, like these little details, like adding the hair and stuff like that, is a bonus that we do if we have time. Okay, so say I just want to shift my feet back on this whole thing, but I don't want to affect my masters. What I can do is use the animate onion skin range. I'm just going to open it up so it's here. It's not touching any of my master stuff there. And I'm just going to skew it back. It will do all the frames within this zone. Super handy. And it won't touch anything after. So now my feet are back a little bit. She's got a little bit more curve in her spine. Nothing's jittery, nothing's popping. The joints aren't smashing. That backhand has a nice little flip. 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 A little bit of hair motion. Very, very little time. So this is 30 minutes in. And I had to go let the dog out in the middle, which I will edit out. We have something that's like, this could be a background character. It's fine. It's not winning any Annie Awards, but it's getting the job done, and you're not battling yourself. Your joints aren't cracking. Like, if you're just doing a walk cycle and your joints are cracking all over the place, you're starting something in an inefficient way. Use the joints that the rigger has given you to the maximum potential that they have. And start very simple. Put all your keys together, chain them out, and you'll have a good time. And now, if we wanted to change something like the head, needed to be a different version of the head, say we needed it to be a front head, we could just clean all the head animation out, leave everything else on the body working, and then we have, we need the front head. Pop the head on there, and now we can, it's changing drawing subs. Boop, boop. We can add this head, then just fix the head. All right, we've got a 3/4 walk cycle we've already got from the stock, but we need a front head on it. We don't reanimate anything. We just clear out the head. We put the new head on, and now we're going to fix anything that the head needs us to fix. And we can add in additional acting and stuff on top of this. I might maybe I'll find time to do that video before I head to Newfoundland. But I think this might be the last one I'm recording. So hopefully that's helpful. Go download this rig. It's great. It's nice to work with. Always try to help future you. Always try and animate in a way that helps future you. All right, so like, share, subscribe, all those things that people ask you to do, and I'll see you in the next video.